Installing a Haldex automatic brake adjuster is simple and quick when you follow the procedures step by step. As a truck service technician, you should know some special things about installing Haldex brake adjusters, such as those covered in this maintenance manual, to make your job easier. Learning those unique points is the purpose of this tape. Before we begin, let's review two basics every truck technician knows. Number one, when installing brake adjusters, always chock the vehicle wheels. Nothing ruins your day faster than a truck that rolls when no one thought it would. Number two, make sure the brake system has a minimum of 80 psi pressure to keep the spring brake fully released. However, if no air is available, the spring brake must be completely caged while you are installing the adjuster. All right, let's look at how you install the Haldex automatic brake adjuster. Begin the actual installation by removing the air chamber nut. Clean or brush the cam splines. Then brush them with anti-seize lubricant. Slip on a protection washer. Then, with the adjusting hex pointing away from the air chamber, slide the adjuster onto the camshaft. Slip on as many outer protection washers as you need to reduce the end play to approximately 1/16 inch. Then, install the E-ring or snap ring to secure the adjuster to the shaft. Connect the pushrod clevis to the adjuster by rotating the adjusting hex nut to line up the clevis holes with the adjustment armhole. Don't pull the pushrod assembly out to meet the adjuster. Apply anti-seize to the clevis pin and slip it through the hole. Then, install the cotter pin. Now, position the control arm by rotating the control arm away from the adjusting hex nut. If the control arm is not positioned properly, a tight brake could occur. When it rotates to an internal stop, this installation indicator will fall into this slot. Most adjusters will be equipped with this installation indicator. Now, conduct the final installation steps. Install the anchor bracket, the air chamber washer and nut, and the control arm nut. The anchor bracket configuration will change depending on the application. However, the steps to install the adjuster are the same. Tighten all fasteners, including the anchor bracket, making sure the control arm did not move from its correct position. Even an automatic brake adjuster must be adjusted manually when first installed or at a reline. Rotate the adjusting hex nut clockwise with a 7/16 wrench until the lining contacts the drum. As you back it off counterclockwise 1/2 turn, you will be overcoming an internal clutch, and you'll hear a ratcheting sound, which is normal. It takes about 20 foot-pounds to overcome this ratchet. At the beginning of this procedure, we noted that you may encounter different types of anchor brackets. For instance, you may see the bracket clamped to the S-cam tube, or the bracket may be bolted to the brake spider. Just remember, the configuration and location of the anchor bracket may change, but the installation of the adjuster remains the same. Haldex, simple to understand and install. Installing a Haldex automatic brake adjuster is simple and quick when you follow the procedures step by step. Let's start with the anchor bracket and adjuster installation. Our procedures are different right from the start. First, remove 2 of the S-cam support bolts. Then, apply anti-seize lubrication to the S-cam spline. Next, mount the anchor bracket to the adjuster side of the S-cam support. Because of the added plate thickness, longer bolts and washers are supplied with the kit, and, as you can see, they may be needed to make sure the mounting threads fully engage. Then, tighten the anchor plate bolts. On axles like this example, you'll find an anchor plate already built into the cam support, so you won't have to remove any bolts. The next step is to slip a protection washer between the adjuster and the S-cam support. You may need more than one washer. Use as many as you need to centrally space the adjuster on the shaft. Now you're ready to fit the adjuster onto the S-cam shaft, remembering that the adjusting hex must point away from the air chamber. First, rotate the adjusting hex clockwise to move the brake adjuster into the clevis. Don't pull the pushrod assembly out to meet the adjuster. Brush anti-seize lubricant on the clevis pin, and install the clevis pin and the cotter pin. Slip on as many outer protection washers as you need to reduce the clearance between washer and adjuster to 1/16 inch or less. Here's another of those special cases. As the pointing finger shows, Eaton axles feature the anchor bracket plate mounted with only one bolt. As with other axles, the control arm must be located properly to have the correct lining to drum clearance. To get this proper clearance, rotate the control arm toward the air chamber until it comes to an internal stop. And tap it lightly to assure the proper position. When you have the control arm properly located, you can tell immediately, because this installation indicator will be within this slotted area. Now, slip the anchor stud through the slotted plate, the lock nut, and the control arm bushing. Then, making sure the control arm does not move out of its position and that the installation indicator stays in its slotted area, tighten the lock nut. Then, check the indicator again. Now, let's do the brake adjustment. First, turn the 7/16 adjusting hex clockwise until the lining contacts the drum. Next, back off the adjusting hex counterclockwise approximately half a turn. Again, you'll hear that perfectly normal ratcheting sound. And that concludes our typical installation on a trailer. Haldex automatic adjusters must be checked at every preventive maintenance inspection. First, visually inspect not only the adjuster for wear or damage, but the anchor bracket too for looseness or for being bent or broken. If equipped with an anchor screw, check it too for wear. Next, check the brake chamber mounting. 1, that the bolts are tight, and 2, that the bolts are properly aligned to keep the chamber pushrod from interfering with the housing. Another check is the angle formed by the center lines of the adjuster and pushrod shaft. This angle should be approximately 90 degrees with a full brake application. However, this angle will not affect the operation of the Haldex adjuster. In some cases, this angle will be changed by the vehicle manufacturer to avoid interference. This angle can be varied plus or minus 10 degrees without a noticeable loss of force. Now for the all-important procedure, measuring pushrod stroke. When you know how to read stroke measurement, you can use it as a diagnostic tool for the brake assembly. For example, if the stroke is too long or too short, it can point to possible problems with bushings, cams, return springs, air chambers, or wheel bearings. If these all check out okay, but the adjuster still will not adjust automatically, then the adjuster itself must be replaced. Let's examine the air chamber types you will encounter most often. The pushrod travel must be less than these limits shown in the right-hand column. You'll find the Type 36 in special heavy-duty applications, the Type 30 on most drive axles and just about all trailer axles, the Type 24 long stroke on Mack and Ford drive axles, and the standard types 24, 20, 16, and 12 on steer axles. Stroke must be measured carefully. With the brakes fully released, measure the distance from the air chamber face to the center of the clevis pin. Now, apply the brakes at 80 to 90 psi, the pressure recommended by CVSA, and again measure the distance from the chamber face to clevis pin center. Subtract the release dimension from the applied dimension, and the result is the total pushrod stroke. You can also make this measurement by attaching a plastic tie to the pushrod, like this, and simply measuring the plastic tie movement. With this method, the stroke is measured directly. It is not necessary to subtract one dimension from the other. A worn S-cam bushing will increase pushrod stroke, so check these bushings at each PM inspection and replace these bushings at every reline. To check the adjuster's clutch mechanism, turn the 7/16 adjustment hex counterclockwise to check clutch torque. You will hear that normal ratcheting sound. Replace the adjuster if the clutch slips at less than 13 foot-pounds of torque. The lining to drum clearance is set by the position of the control arm. If the brake is too tight, check the control arm location. With the brake released, loosen the connection between the anchor bracket and the control arm. Now, try to rotate the arm toward the air chamber. If it moves, the control arm was misinstalled and, probably, the brakes were tight. As you can see, this control arm and adjuster were installed properly. If the arm had moved, the anchor bracket would have to have been relocated to a new control arm position. Last, tighten the anchor screw. If tight brakes persist, check the wheel bearing adjustment for proper end play. Remember, loose bearings can cause dragging brakes. After checking the control arm location, manually adjust the brake by tightening it until the lining hits the drum, and then back it off half a turn. By the way, adjusters should be lubricated at least every 50,000 miles or 3 months. No special grease is needed. It's easy to check the operation of a Haldex brake adjuster. Back off the adjusting hex to deliberately create too much clearance between the lining and drum. The adjuster will immediately sense this excessive clearance and begin to correct it. To watch it correcting this excessive clearance, attach a wrench to the adjusting hex, holding it in place with a piece of paper or tape. Now, apply the brakes over and over. With each brake application, the Haldex adjuster will sense the lining to drum clearance and, if needed, take up approximately 10% of that excessive clearance on each application. The adjustments will get smaller and smaller as the adjuster gets closer and closer to correct lining to drum clearance. The final operating stroke will not be reached until the vehicle is put into service and the linings have been burnished. We can't end this video without this reminder. The best automatic brake adjuster will not cure other brake problems. Problems that can be discovered at the most unsuitable times, like a way station. The foundation brake system must not be allowed to deteriorate, but must be properly maintained to have effective brakes, especially in heavy traffic. The self-adjuster has an important job, to keep lining to drum clearance correct and to keep pushrod stroke uniform, so every time the driver hits that pedal, each brake location does its share of the braking for the shortest possible stopping distance.